Welcome back to lesson number 3 of this beginner saber series with yours truly, the FloWarrior. In today's lesson, we'll be covering the figure 8, also known as the forward and reverse weave, which allows you to transition smoothly between the outside and inside of your arm, which can be your front and back wall planes, or your left and right wheel planes, both of which are important to practice. A quick reminder that spinning the saber to the inside of our arm requires an internal rotation, while spinning the saber to the outside of our arm requires an external rotation. The figure 8 pattern involves alternating between these two positions as we bend our hand into the plane of the saber, which is good to practice without the saber at first. So if we start with our arm extended out in front of us and our palm pointed down, we're going to complete a forward direction circle to the left side of our arm as our palm and forearm flip over. And then we're going to do the same thing on the right side, forward direction circle as our palm and forearm flip over. You'll notice that you have slightly less range of motion to the outside of your arm, which is going to mean that when we introduce the saber, we're going to be holding the saber a little bit more loosely as we complete the circle to the outside of our arm. Then we want to reverse this into a reverse direction, so we do a reverse direction to the right side of our arm as our palm and forearm flip over, and then a reverse direction circle to the left side as our palm and forearm flip over. Here's another angle where you'll notice that in the forward direction, my hand is always moving down when transitioning from one side to the other, and in reverse direction, my hand is always moving up when transitioning from one side to the other. Once you've had a chance to practice that figure 8 pattern with your hand, you can start to incorporate the saber. So we're going to start with the saber in our right hand and forward grip. Facing the camera, we're going to extend our arm out to our right side with a slight external rotation of our wrist so that both the hilt and the blade of the saber are in our front wall plane. From this position, the tip is going to lead into our back wall plane, followed by the hilt for a half rotation. Once it's here, both the blade and the hilt should be in our back wall plane. Then we're going to complete another half rotation in our back wall plane. And then with this internal rotation of our wrist, the tip is going to lead into our front wall plane in a half rotation, and then we complete another half rotation in our front wall plane. So tip leads to back, hilt follows, half rotation in back plane, tip leads to front plane and hilt follows, half rotation in front plane. Once you've got those 4 positions down, you can start to smooth it out while keeping your arms straight, making sure that all of the motion is generated from your wrist, and keeping those planes nice and vertical and tight in your front and back wall planes. Next, we want to learn how to do this in the reverse direction. So we go back to the exact same starting position. In this case, we complete the top half of the circle in our front wall plane, and then the hilt leads first, followed by the blade into our back wall plane. Then we complete a half rotation in our back plane, and again, the hilt leads followed by the blade into our front. So half rotation in front, hilt leads to back, half rotation in back, hilt leads to front. And then once again, once we have those positions practiced, we can start to smooth it out while keeping our arms straight, keeping the movement of our wrist smooth, and keeping those planes nice and vertical in our front and back wall planes. Next, we need to learn to apply this to reverse grip. So we're going to go back to a similar starting position where we're facing the camera, arm extended out to the right side, thumb side pointed out to the right, but in this case, the pinky side of the blade is pointed towards us and in front of our shoulder. We're going to go through the exact same motion where the thumb side is going to lead into our back plane, which is now the hilt. So the hilt leads into our back plane, followed by the blade, then half rotation in our back plane, then the hilt leads into our front plane, and then half rotation in front plane. Same thing, we're going to start smoothing it out, really focusing on that wrist dexterity and smoothness, and keeping those planes nice and parallel and vertical in our front and back wall planes. And you guessed it, we need to learn this in a reverse direction as well. So we're back to the exact same starting position. In this case, we're going to do the bottom half of the circle in our front wall plane, and then the pinky side, which is the blade, is going to lead to the back wall plane, followed by the hilt. Complete a half rotation in our back wall plane, and then the blade leads to the front, followed by the hilt, back to our starting position. And then once you have those 4 positions, again, we just start to smooth it out, really focusing on the smoothness of the wrist and those tight, vertical, parallel front and back wall planes. A quick rule of thumb to remember is that for forward weave, the thumb side is always crossing first, which in forward grip is the blade, and in reverse grip is the hilt. And in reverse weave, the pinky side is always crossing first, which in forward grip is the hilt, and in reverse grip is the blade. Now I've demonstrated the figure 8 technique transitioning between my front and back wall planes, but I'd also like you to practice it transitioning between your left and right wheel planes. In this case, because the distance between your shoulders is often a little bit wider than the distance between your front and back sides, you'll have to bend your elbow a little bit to reach across your body, and your wrist will move a little bit further left and right than it does between your front and back wall planes. And just like in lesson 2 with the basic spin, we want to learn how to do all of these techniques with our left hand. That about does it for today's lesson on the figure 8. Now that we understand how to use the basic spin to trace circles to the outside and the inside of our arm, how to use the figure 8 to transition smoothly between the outside and inside of our arm, in our next lesson I'll be showing you the basic flow, which shows you how to transition smoothly between forward weave and reverse weave by incorporating a shoulder circle and by switching the direction that our body is facing.